The M1 iPad Pro, specifically the 12.9-inch model, which is the one that I'm going to be talking about exclusively in this video, was a product that I was really excited to check out when it was announced this year. I love my iPad Pro from 2018. It was one of those products I absolutely could not live without since getting one, and especially when I'm traveling. And I'm really hoping there would just be a day where I didn't need to carry an iPad Pro and my MacBook Pro in the same bag when traveling, meaning I could just get all of the work done that I needed to get done while on the go, and then easily pop it into media consumption mode and just free up some extra space in my bag. Fast forward to today, we have an all new iPad Pro that's become even a bigger powerhouse than it has in the past, especially in performance, and it has tons of crazy high-end features like an incredible liquid Retina XDR display made out of mini LEDs, and of course that M1 chip for super efficient performance. But yet here I am still using the iPad Pro the same way I was before. It's a machine that can do all of the light work in emails and script writing and just really good at photo editing and some of those other, more intense tasks, but not the ones that I really need to completely replace my laptop when on the go. It's mostly just for those tasks and watching content, and that's largely because of iPadOS. Now, I'm not one of those people who wants iPadOS to just turn into macOS, although that probably would just be the easiest solution at this point. But I do wish that there were some more very specific applications, functions, features, whatever, that could really take advantage of all of this power underneath the hood. Because believe me, there's lots of power there. I guess for me, I would have loved Apple to introduce some features at WWDC for iPadOS 15 that were again specifically tailored for M1 iPad Pros to give it that extra push towards being a genuine computer replacement. But instead, we get some of the same features that were retooled to make them a bit useful, like multitasking and that shelf feature that they introduced, which I still have never really used. And even though it's an M1 machine, it still can't run a lot of Pro apps like Logic or Final Cut Pro, which are the two that I would really like to see. That's kind of the only downside to everything with this new iPad Pro. I mean, you can see here through benchmarks just how much extra power this new iPad has compared to even something like last year's 2020 model. But I haven't really been able to say anything in real world use like, wow, this thing is so much faster, because the other models were already pretty freaking fast and they were already really powerful, and the current Pro app landscape really hasn't changed much at all. It's still an incredibly powerful iPad that's sitting on a lot of horsepower without the appropriate engine to really drive it all home. I don't really know if that makes any sense. I'm not a car guy, I make tech videos, but you get what I mean. Anyways, I'm still sitting here being gullible and hopeful that Apple will eventually figure it all out and offer what a lot of the Pro user base are clamoring for, at least the people that I think they're designing this iPad for. But until then, that's one of the main reasons I'd say it's probably not worth upgrading to if you have a 2018 or 2020 model. Unless, of course, you really can't live without that XDR display, which is a very nice upgrade in my opinion. It's one of the saving grace features that I'm actually really enjoying on this new iPad Pro because, well, it reminds me that it is a new iPad Pro because it's one of those features that you can actually see. The new display is pretty darn close to being an OLED display, thanks in part to the mini LED technology that's allowing for those deeper blacks and higher contrast ratios. We did an entire video detailing all the differences in displays between this and last year's model, and it's pretty noticeable on camera, but it's even more noticeable in person. There's a bit of a blooming effect going on, and it is something that you will see and definitely notice in some hyper-specific situations, but for everyday use, maybe I've just become accustomed to it because I don't really notice that blooming as much anymore. Watching content on the iPad Pro and even just everyday tasks like writing up scripts, browsing the web and just, responding to emails is far more enjoyable on this iPad because of how good this display is. Everything is so crisp, vibrant, and it really just all pops off the screen. If you're a photographer and you want a relatively affordable way to edit your photos using a fantastic HDR monitor, or maybe you want to review and tweak some HDR footage from your phone, this iPad is a great option for that. The addition of Thunderbolt 4 is also really nice, or just Thunderbolt in general, because now you can plug in Thunderbolt drives, SSDs, accessories, and have full compatibility, as well as even extend your display to a Thunderbolt monitor. The biggest gripe for me here, though, is that iPadOS is still limiting this feature. Like, why aren't you actually able to extend your display 100% of the time for all functions? Rather than just limiting use cases is beyond me. I have no idea why this is still a thing. 99% of the time, your iPad is just wasting away being a mirror for what's on your larger screen. It just does not make a lot of sense to me. And it's still not full screen either. You still get those black bars on the sides, which I just still can't comprehend why that's still a thing. Oh, and I also exclusively use my iPad Pro with a Magic Keyboard case. It's my favorite accessory. There are other cases out there that are very good, that are less money, but I still love this one. The new model for these 2021 iPad Pros are in fact designed to fit those iPads to a T. They're perfect. However, the older Magic Keyboard is like borderline not noticeably different to the human eye. And so you can definitely get away with saving $350 and just keep using the older Magic Keyboard if you already own one. If you don't, Best Buy over the last few weeks has had them on sale for like $150 to $200 off. And if you ever see that deal and you're considering getting one, you should do that. You won't be disappointed, especially at that price. With that said, it could be a placebo effect here, but I feel like my all-white model just kind of hits different for me. I'm not really sure why. And this is in a better way. It feels better to type on. It's supposed to be the exact same materials, so it's probably just in my head. One last feature that might be incredibly helpful and maybe worth the upgrade for you is if you take a lot of video calls, and that's the inclusion of center stage for that front-facing camera. This is a feature that basically takes the ultra-wide camera on the new iPad Pro and crops in to follow the subject around, and it works surprisingly well. It opens up a whole new way to take video calls using your iPad. You're no longer confined to one single spot. You can have a bit more freedom with your movements, and you really never have to worry about whether or not you're in frame. Yes, it does work inside of other apps aside from just FaceTime, like Zoom, and this is something that might be a bit niche, so if you don't need that feature, then it's probably not worth upgrading for. But for a lot of you who are using this as a computer replacement and you do a lot of video calls, it's a great feature to have. So yeah, these are my thoughts over the last few months. There are some other rear camera improvements that I don't really want to talk about because honestly, I don't use AR. I don't take photos and videos on my iPad, so I'm probably not the right person to talk more about that. There might be other videos about it, so you might want to go out and check those out. But for me, those improvements are just not important to me. There's also been the addition of 5G support, which would be really cool if I traveled and worked out of the house like I used to, but that's just not what's going on right now. And LTE was more than enough. So again, 5G is a nice to have, but not something I'd rush out to upgrade for either. Without traveling for work or, traveling for just pleasure and having an iPad Pro alongside you, it's really become an expensive and underutilized tool. And I'd love for not only travel to pick up, but for Apple to really pick up the experience and features for these really powerful mobile computer